emerging issues and Deputy Chief Economist. This month, our America's Credit Union's Economic Update is focused on content collected and analyzed by the data and research team that's specific to our advocacy agenda. When it comes to an issue like overdraft protection, often the media and even policymakers lose sight of important differences in customer bases. All things equal, a bank or credit union serving more low-income consumers living paycheck to paycheck will likely see higher demand for short-term credit products. That includes overdraft protection. Figuring out just how many households are living paycheck to paycheck and potentially in need of these products is a growing interest in the field of macroeconomics. Recent developments in macro modeling recognize that households living at the margins are likely to spend a larger share of any fiscal or monetary stimulus, which would impact how much economic activity a given amount of stimulus would create. Of course, we saw how important this issue was during the pandemic. Many households spent most or all of their stimulus checks right away, while others spent it more slowly, and still others instead use that money to pay off debt or build savings. These recent studies utilized the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances to determine the share of households living paycheck to paycheck, or what's also called living hand to mouth. Using this survey allows us to distinguish between bank and credit union households. Our analysis shows that credit unions consistently serve a higher share of hand-to-mouth households than banks do. In our most recent data from 2022, just under 40% of households that utilize credit unions as their primary financial institutions have liquid financial assets of less than 2 weeks of income. This result clearly shows how credit unions are on the front lines, serving households living at the margins. While we already knew that, it's always nice to get confirmation, especially using an approach that is grounded in the academic literature and which comes from a survey that is widely recognized as the most reliable source of data on household finances. Now let's switch gears and talk about banking deserts. Earlier this year, the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia released a report on banking deserts. It is specifically focusing on the changes to the branching landscape since the onset of the pandemic. In the very first paragraph of that report, it notes that the pace of bank branch closures has doubled since 2019. Not surprisingly, this has resulted in a 6% increase in banking deserts over that time. But the more interesting thing that this report does is to look at which types of institutions are driving the rise in banking deserts. They look at the respective branch networks of very large banks with over 50 billion in assets, large banks with 10 to 50 billion in assets, community banks with under 10 billion, and credit unions. What did they find? When it comes to the institution that created new banking deserts since 2019, that is the bank or credit union that closed the last remaining branch in a census tract, large and very large banks are both overrepresented. Together, they make up about 45% of total bank and credit union branches, but were responsible for the creation of 62% of new banking deserts. Meanwhile, credit unions are significantly underrepresented, having closed the final branch in a census tract just 8% of the time. Now consider those cases where a bank or credit union opens a branch in a census tract that previously had no branches, effectively curing a banking desert. Here, credit unions are significantly overrepresented, accounting for 36% of those instances, despite having only about 1 in 5 total branches. When you put these two together, as shown in our net rating column on the right side of the table, it's clear that credit unions are doing more than any other type of depository institution to address the need for financial services in census tracts that other institutions are abandoning. This is a message we've consistently shared with lawmakers, but it is very encouraging to get objective data from the Federal Reserve confirming this fact. Finally, let's touch on some recent data collected from an America's Credit Union survey. We frequently ask members to share how various individual regulatory proposals impacted non-interest income. But something that often goes missing with each new proposal is calculating the cumulative impact of these proposals as a whole. We asked our members in April about the CFPB's proposals on credit card late fees, overdraft, and NSF fees, together with the Federal Reserve's proposal to reduce the debit interchange cap and threats of enforcement actions. Taking all of that into consideration, the median survey respondent anticipated a resulting 28% drop in non-interest income, with an average decline of 31%. In terms of the overall impact on products and services, respondents confirmed that they are at the breaking point. The vast majority expected they would be forced to reduce other member benefits through less attractive rates and card rewards. And over half said free checking accounts would no longer be viable due to the combined impact. The data we get from our monthly surveys is critical to arming us with the data we need to advocate on your behalf. As always, if you have any data or research-related questions, please email us at custat@americascreditunions.org. That'll do it for this edition of the Economic Update. We'll see you again next month.